Did you know that I spent 100 years building a giant ark to save all the animals from the flood? Hello, I'm Noah, and for years I worked tirelessly to build a great wooden boat while everyone mocked me, thinking I had gone mad. However, my faith in God never wavered, and I remained obedient to His word. When the rains came and the waters covered the earth as punishment for the wickedness of men, the ark became the only refuge to preserve life on earth. After 40 days and 40 nights of intense rain, hope was reborn with the appearance of the rainbow, God's promise never to destroy the earth again. I invite you to stay until the end to hear the full story of my life and learn valuable lessons for your spiritual growth. My name is Noah, and I was born in a time when humanity's wickedness had reached its peak, and corruption spread as widely and deeply as the ocean. I lived in a world where justice seemed to have disappeared, and violence took over the entire land. But in the midst of this darkness, I did my best to live differently. From a very young age, my father Lamech and my grandfather Methuselah, who also walked with God in their generation, taught me to seek justice and mental purity in a world that had lost its way. As I grew up, my desire to live God's way grew stronger, despite the ridicule and scorn of my contemporaries. It was a chaotic time to live in. Leaders were corrupt, and society was governed by chaos and greed. Injustice was the norm, not the exception. However, in my silent obedience, I found favor in the eyes of God. It was in these difficult times that God revealed Himself to me, not only to convey His displeasure with humanity, but also to entrust me with a mission that would define my existence. God told me that because of the corruption of the world, He had decided to destroy every living being under the sky with a great flood. However, through my faith and righteousness, my family and I would be saved. He entrusted me with the task of building a wooden boat, a boat so large that it could house my family and a pair of each species of living creatures. This task was not without great responsibility. I had to build the ark exactly according to God's specifications, a task that would consume decades of my life. I accepted this task with a heavy but willing heart, knowing that what was about to happen would be a test of my faith like no other. With every plank I laid, every step I took, my commitment to God was tested, while the scorn of my neighbors grew. However, the promise of salvation and a new beginning for creation kept me faithful to my purpose. So think about your own life. Have you ever found yourself at odds with the mainstream of society? Do you have the courage to stand up for your beliefs even when others belittle them? My life story invites you to consider the power of integrity and faith in an often hostile world. Sometimes being chosen by God is not a path to comfort, but a great test that determines character and destiny. After receiving the revelation that an imminent flood would engulf the earth, I faced the enormous task of building an ark. This was no simple boat, but one of enormous size, designed to survive torrential waters that would erase all life from the face of the earth. God's instructions were very specific. The ark had to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, made of gopher wood and covered with pitch inside and out. At that time, the idea of building a boat in the middle of dry land was a subject of ridicule by the people of the time. There was no significant river for a floating structure, much less a nearby ocean. Every day, while my sons and I laid each wooden plank, we could hear the laughter and sarcastic comments of our neighbors. However, my faith in the divine mandate never wavered. I knew that every hammer blow, every plank laid, was a step towards preserving God's creation. Building an ark is not only a physical challenge but also a mental and emotional one. During the long years I spent on this task, my family and I always had to live in a state of exile. But these years also taught us perseverance, faith, and teamwork. My sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with their wives and my wife, became my main support. Together, we shared the burden of duty and the weight of responsibility. In the context of a time when corruption and violence were rampant, the act of building became a symbol of protest against moral decay. Although many people considered me a fanatic, I knew that I was fulfilling a purpose greater than just saving my family. I was acting as the protector of God's creation. As this period of my life comes to an end, I invite you to reflect on the moments when you had to defend your beliefs alone. Have you ever felt that you were building your own ark, preparing for an uncertain future while others doubted you? In my experience, these moments define our character and strengthen our faith. May my story inspire you to persevere in your plans and beliefs, even when the world around you seems indifferent or even hostile to your efforts. The culmination of years of effort and faith approached with dark omens in the sky. After the ark was completed, the time came to face the final test announced by God. Clouds gathered above us like mountains in the sky, heralding the beginning of the flood that would erase evil from the earth. With deep solemnity, my family and I, along with pairs of living creatures, entered the ark, guided by a divine force that seemed to lead all the animals toward us. The flood began with indescribable cruelty. The cataracts of heaven opened, and the fountains of the great deep burst forth, plunging the world into watery chaos and great destruction. For 40 days and 40 nights, the water rose, covering the mountains and erasing all traces of civilization as we knew it. Inside the ark, every creak of the wood was a constant reminder of the severity of God's judgment on the world's depravity. This time was one of deep reflection for me and my family. Trapped in our floating refuge, we witnessed not only the destruction of the old world, but also the miraculous preservation of part of the creation. It was a time to meditate on justice and mercy, on the severity and love of God, who even in his judgment opened the way to renewal and hope. Life on board was not easy. The daily care of the animals, the maintenance of the vessel, and the management of our limited resources required constant diligence. However, these trials also helped strengthen our family bonds and our faith in God's promises. We learned to live with the essentials, appreciating every small breath and every ray of light that pierced the clouds. As you reflect on this experience, I invite you to think about your own storms and floods. How do you face challenges that threaten to overwhelm you? Have you found in your faith a vessel that offers you refuge and renewal? Just as my family and I found salvation in the midst of the flood, your own faith can provide you with protection and guidance in the darkest moments of your life. May the story of the flood inspire you to keep the faith in the face of adversity, always remembering that after the storm comes the promise of a new beginning. After the waters began to recede, the wooden boat, our refuge during many uncertain months, finally found rest on top of Mount Ararat. It was a moment of deep gratitude and new hope, but also of uncertainty. Even as the land began to rise from its watery grave, the world as we knew it had changed forever. The following days were full of anticipation. With the earth still saturated and living conditions uncertain, the question of when and how to leave the boat weighed heavily on our hearts. I let a raven fly back and forth until the water dried up. Then I let a dove out to see if it could find a dry place to rest. At first, it returned with nothing. However, on its second flight, it carried a fresh olive leaf in its beak, a sign of life that brought us infinite joy. Its third flight was the last, as it never returned to the ark, a sign that the land was dry enough to support life once again. The time we spent on the boat, suspended between a destroyed world and one about to be reborn, was a time of deep reflection for me and my family. We discussed our experiences, shared lessons learned, and reflected on our role in this new world. Every conversation, every moment of silence, strengthened our determination to live according to God's commandments, aware that we are the guardians of a renewed creation and humanity. Finally, stepping out of the ark for the first time in weeks, the first thing I did was build an altar and offer sacrifices to God to thank Him for His protection and mercy. This act of worship marked a new beginning for humanity and established an eternal covenant between God and all earthly life. This chapter of my life highlights the importance of faith and patience during times of transition. In your life, how do you handle periods of uncertainty? Can you find signs of hope and keep believing in a better future even when the present seems unstable? May this story of waiting, observing, and ultimately rebirth inspire you to keep hope alive during times of change and to act with faith and determination when it's time to move forward into new opportunities. Let's learn together that after every end, there is a new beginning, and with every new beginning comes the opportunity to create a future defined by gratitude and commitment to higher values. My name is Noah, and this was my story. After leaving the ark and raising an altar to worship God, I felt a deep responsibility towards the earth and its inhabitants. My family and I struggled to rebuild our lives in a world transformed by the floods. We watched nature renew itself, and the organisms began their life cycles anew. As a testimony to God's trust in our ability to steward His creation, an eternal covenant was established between him and all humanity. This covenant is symbolized by the rainbow, a clear reminder that he will never again destroy the earth with a flood. This moment is a confirmation of our faith and a promise of divine protection as we fulfill our purpose on earth. In the years that followed, we faced trials and triumphs, but we always remembered the lesson of the Ark, that obedience and faith in God bring rewards beyond our understanding. I can't help but think how simply listening to and obeying God resulted in the preservation of my family and all life on earth. My life story invites us all to think about our actions and their impact on the environment and future generations. How do we care for the creation that has been entrusted to us? Are we willing to listen and follow God's direction in our lives, even when circumstances seem difficult or confusing? May the memory of the Ark and the eternal covenant of the rainbow inspire you to live with gratitude, obedience, and love for God and your neighbor. Let's learn together to be responsible stewards of the earth and the gifts God has given us, always remembering that God calls us to be bearers of hope and agents of His love in the world. This is the legacy I want to share with you so that at every moment of your life, you can remember that even in the midst of storms, the light of God's promise still shines upon us, bringing us safety and peace. May my story inspire you to live with renewed faith and constant obedience, trusting that God is with you every step of the way, guiding you toward a future full of hope and endless possibilities.